Hey guys, I'm Annabelle. As Carmel said, I worked on the National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline for 2 years. I'm going to talk to you today about what human trafficking is, ways to look out for it, prevention, and all that, and hopefully make the hotline a little less scary. That's always my goal. Because I know I was really scared of ever calling it before I worked there. So human trafficking is federally defined as when someone's forced to work through force or coercion or fraud, or when they're forced to have sex for money. With the sex trafficking, which is if you're forced to have sex for money, there is a difference between adults and people under the age of 18. People under the age of 18 can't consent, so there is no need for force, fraud, or coercion. That's only for adults. And then sex trafficking too, I'll start with that piece because I think that's the one more people know about. A commercial element can be obviously money, but it's also when people are forced to engage in sex it could be for a safe place to stay, it could be for food, it could be for medicine, anything with value. So that is, I think, something more people know about. But then there is also labor trafficking, which is the piece where you're forced to work against your will. And we see a lot of that in the US. There was a big bust actually in Texas, so hopefully I'm going to tell you a little bit about that just to clear up, because I think labor trafficking is a thing that people aren't sure about. So that case in Texas was with a foreign national woman. She was working for a couple in a domestic servitude situation, or cleaning the house, taking care of their children. And she was negotiating a contract with the family while she was in Nigeria. And they had a verbal agreement of $100 per month. She would work the normal 40 hours a week and had the understanding that she would stay in the home and be provided with food and water. That situation changed when she got there. She wasn't paid, she wasn't allowed to leave the home. She was working from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. and only allowed minimal sleep. She wasn't allowed access to any of the fresh water and was only allowed to have leftovers. They took her identification, so oftentimes, we'll see cases where people may have a work visa, they may not, but there are very strict rules. If you have a work visa, or even if you don't, you're entitled to clean water, a safe place to stay. If you have a contract, that can be verbal or written, so even if they hadn't had a signed piece of paper, if they had the discussion of, we're paying you X amount, you're working X amount of hours, that's a contract, even if you don't have it in paper. So that was a big case for, labor trafficking, because a neighbor saw one day she wasn't allowed to leave, but she was allowed to walk the children around the property, and they had never seen this woman before. And she looked like she hadn't eaten enough. She looked exhausted, and so they were able to call the hotline and get connected with resources, and now both the husband and wife in that case are looking at 60 years and $1 million in charges for visa fraud, for labor trafficking, putting someone in danger. She didn't have access to call 911, which you as a person always need to have access to call 911. That's a right in the United States if you're in danger. So in that case, for labor situations, some things to look out for. She had her passport, she had any ID that she had taken away from her. And that is oftentimes used to intimidate people, where they can say, if you try and call someone, I can tell immigration that you don't have ID, you don't have a visa. So that's used a lot of times to scare people, or they may threaten family. We see that a lot if someone's from another country and maybe the family that the person is working for, the employer, may have connections to that original home country. They'll threaten family or anyone that they know there. But it was great that neighbor was able to call the hotline, because we aren't connected to immigration. The hotline is not connected to the government in any way, law enforcement, it's totally there. So we can get people in these situations connected to resources. If you have the work visa, if you don't, it doesn't matter. We may ask that question, but it's only to figure out the best fit. It's, US citizen or not, everyone has a right to feeling safe and secure. And then, so with that too, that can happen to US citizens as well, not just foreign nationals, but it is different. You're gonna be looking for different signs. That people still have their driver's license taken, you know, any social security cards, that type of thing. So someone who doesn't have access to anything that's their own, we see a lot of physical and emotional violence towards people in labor trafficking situations. So looking for bruises, you know, seeing how many hours someone's working. If it seems a place is open way too late, or there's people who aren't able to leave, you know, those are signs to look out for labor. And then for sex trafficking, those were a large number of calls we got on the hotline, I just think, again, because of the public awareness. But those cases often start out, I found in the US, as people in relationships. So it's someone, these survivors may be dating the person that trafficked them. It was a lot of, you know, intimate partner violence, where it started off as the person is great, you know, you are dating, they really care about you, it seems really great, but then it turns to, oh, we don't have money, I need you to do this. Or, you know, the person may become violent emotionally or physically if you don't do this. So those are, you're adding the element of domestic violence to trafficking cases, which we see a lot of. And it was, for me working on the hotline, a lot of young people are actually in really violent relationships to start with, and it's something where I think as a young person, no one talks to you about that and what rights you have in a relationship, or feeling safe, or what's normal, what's not. So I think, you know, really looking into other issues such as domestic violence and looking for the signs there actually really helps with looking out for warning signs in trafficking. You know, if you have a friend who they may have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's possessive, maybe looking at their phone, or maybe it starts off where they're given all these gifts. You know, a lot of times we'd hear about people getting a new phone just so they can talk to this one person, and that phone would later be used to set up dates or whatever, and that the partner or the trafficker was looking through that phone. It was used specifically for this situation, and it's a lot of control and intimidation again. So, you know, just looking into trusting your gut, is something off? Does that relationship seem off? You know, anyone under 18, again, you can't date an adult. Some states, it's important to look up, may have an 8 or a year limit. So like, I know DC, if you're 17, you can date a 20-year-old, but if you're seeing anything that's a really big difference, trust your gut. You know, it may be something different, but again, that's why the hotline's there. It's because it's not police, it's not government, so you can just talk through the situation and figure out next steps. And so, you know, just looking out, really being aware. We talk a lot about what we call on the hotline IMBs, which are the massage parlors, illicit massage businesses. Those are a little different too, where you'll see sometimes if you're seeing a building that has weird surveillance, a lot of only male traffic going in and out. They may have someone at the door, there may be a camera as you're walking into the door and you have to be buzzed in. If they're not operating during normal business hours, anything like that. So that's just one example. We see a lot, especially with minors, sometimes in those massage parlors, but really we're seeing a lot on Backpage. It's gone underground as far as people under the age of 18 being trafficked, and it is a lot of people they identify as someone they're dating, and they're targeting, these people know to target foster care because people aren't looking out for that, or there's so many people in the foster care system, no one's really focusing on that one person, and maybe not trusting their gut and reaching out if they see something. And so that's why the hotline, we're 24/7, so you can call if you see something weird at 2 a.m., someone's gonna answer the phone, you can call. I would say it's always best if you can call in the moment, if you're in a safe place. Again, your safety and the people in the situation's safety is the most important thing, but calling as soon as you can, just so you can really evaluate. And sometimes it's going to be, you know, we mark the location if it's something where we don't know if it's a situation involved adults because we don't want to get anyone in trouble, or it might be something where, you know, you're directed to maybe call for a welfare check or take an immediate action step. If you can share the number with someone in the situation safely, that's always ideal. The hotline operates as a victim and survivor-centered hotline, so it's really focusing on empowering that person and helping them choose what happens next and what they need to get out of the situation or what they need to be okay. So if you can safely share that number, that's ideal, but you can't always do that. So you can always call, you don't have to give your name. You can make up a name. We've had people say they were Taylor Swift, whatever you're comfortable with. You don't have to give anyone's name that you're not ready to, but I would definitely call them if you can, because the goal is to help the people in the situation first and foremost.